My aunt tried to steal my dead mother's wedding ring at her casket viewing, then held her ashes hostage for $50,000. When I begged her not to flush them, she sent a photo over the bathtub and said, "You should have thought of that before you got everything." I just stared at my phone. That was 2 years ago. Yesterday, she saw something on her screen, went completely still, and hasn't eaten since. The morning we buried my mother, I thought I'd already experienced the worst day of my life, but my delusional Aunt Linda had other plans. I hadn't seen her in over a decade. She'd cut contact with our family after my mom refused to co-sign a loan for her third failed business. Yet there she was, pushing past grieving relatives at the viewing, heading straight for the casket. At first, I thought she just wanted to say goodbye. Fair enough. When I noticed the tears in her eyes, I lightly held her hand, and when she immediately pulled away from me, I settled for keeping an eye on her to make sure she was okay. And that's when I saw it. When no one was looking, she started to tug at my mother's wedding ring. As she glanced around the room to see if anyone noticed, we locked eyes. And instead of awkwardly smiling or pretending like she was innocent, a huge smirk was plastered onto her face. "I deserve it. She promised me this when we were kids," she whispered. I tried to stay calm and tell her to stop, but Linda wasn't having it. "I'm her sister. I deserve something." By this point, she was shouting at the top of her lungs. The entire room fell silent. My kids started crying. My husband moved to intervene, but I put my hand up to stop him. Because even in that moment, watching someone literally try to rob my mother's corpse, I remembered what Mom always said. "Kill them with kindness, sweetheart. It hurts them more than anger ever could." So instead of screaming or calling security, I strolled over to my car and drove off. I figured that she'd cool off by the next day. So when I knocked on her door with a small velvet box, I had full faith that everything would be cleared up. "Here," I said quietly, pressing the box into Linda's shaking hands. "Mom kept these costume jewelry pieces. I think she'd want you to have something to remember you by." Linda snatched the box and slammed the door in my face without saying a word. I thought that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. 3 hours later, as I was about to head to bed, my phone started blowing up. Linda had taken photos of the costume jewelry and posted them all over her private Facebook account. "My selfish niece is hoarding the real diamonds while giving me fake garbage. She's probably already sold everything valuable." The comments were pouring in, distant relatives believing her lies, calling me greedy, selfish, a thief. But none of it mattered to me, because all I could think about was my mother being dead. So I turned off my phone and put my children to bed before crying myself to sleep. After 2 weeks of ignoring my entire family, they finally stopped replying. I was naive enough to think that Linda had moved on, until one day, when I came home from grief counseling. Because as I fumbled with my keys to open the door, I noticed it unlocked a little too easily. And as soon as I walked in, I realized why. The house was ransacked. My mom's china cabinet was empty. The photo albums scattered everywhere. But that wasn't the worst part. We'd cremated Mom but kept some ashes in a beautiful urn on the mantle, something to keep her close while we grieved. And now, it was gone. In its place was a note. It read, "I know you hid the real valuables somewhere. Grandma's ring, the jewelry, the cash. You have 48 hours to give me what's mine or you'll never see these ashes again." I fell to my knees. At that moment, I realized kindness was wasted on some people, and I was about to become her worst nightmare. I called Linda immediately, but she didn't answer. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Her message was the same one she'd had for years. "You've reached Linda. I'm probably busy making money, so leave a message." My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type. I texted her that I'd give her whatever she wanted if she just returned the ashes. I'd sell my car, take out a loan, anything. Those ashes were all I had left of Mom. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. She wanted $50,000 or she'd flush Mom's ashes down the toilet. She'd even sent a photo of the urn sitting on the edge of a bathtub, the lid already removed. I stared at the message in disbelief. I didn't have that kind of money. Nobody in our family did. We were regular people with regular jobs and regular bills. Mom had been a teacher. Dad had worked at the plant until he died 5 years ago. There was no secret fortune, no hidden treasure, just a modest house, some savings bonds, and a lifetime of memories. I called my cousin Jordan, who'd been close to Mom. He'd been one of the few family members who hadn't commented on Linda's Facebook posts. Maybe he could talk sense into Linda. He agreed to meet with her the next day, said he'd try to make her see reason. I spent that night pacing my living room, wearing a path in the carpet Mom had picked out just last year. My husband Kyle tried to comfort me, but I couldn't sit still. The kids kept asking where Grandma's urn went. I told them we were getting it cleaned, hating myself for the lie, but not knowing how to explain that their great aunt was holding their grandmother's remains hostage. Jordan called me the next morning. His voice sounded weird, strained in a way I'd never heard before. He said Linda showed him documents proving Mom promised her the house and all her valuables, legal-looking papers with signatures and dates. I told him that was impossible. Mom would never do that without telling me. She'd been meticulous about her will, had gone over it with me multiple times to make sure I understood her wishes. But Jordan said the papers looked real. He thought maybe I should just give Linda something substantial to end all this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jordan had known me since we were kids. We'd grown up together, been in each other's weddings, celebrated each other's children. Now he was taking her side? That's when I realized Linda was playing a bigger game than I thought. She wasn't just after money. She was turning my family against me, isolating me, making me the villain in a story she was writing, and she was using my mother's ashes as leverage to do it. I discovered Linda had been slowly turning the entire extended family against her by sharing edited text messages. She'd screenshot our conversations, but cut out parts to make it look like I was planning to cut everyone out of any inheritance. She'd taken a message where I said, "I need to go through Mom's things carefully," and edited it to look like I wrote, "I need to hide Mom's things carefully." Another one where I mentioned, "The estate lawyer said everything was in order," became, "The estate lawyer said everything was mine now." She'd even doctored timestamps to make it seem like I'd been plotting while Mom was still alive, creating a narrative where I'd been counting down the days until I could claim my inheritance. My own brother Thomas started questioning if I was hiding assets. He called me that afternoon while I was trying to clean up the mess Linda had made of my house. His voice was cold, suspicious in a way that broke my heart. He asked if it was true that I'd already sold Mom's jewelry collection. I told him Mom didn't have a jewelry collection, just a few pieces of costume jewelry and her wedding ring. But he didn't believe me. Linda had been filling his head with stories about secret safe deposit boxes and hidden valuables. She told him about a supposed diamond necklace that Mom had inherited from our grandmother, complete with fabricated details about its appraisal value and how I'd sold it to a private dealer the day after the funeral. That's when I found out Linda had been going through Mom's storage unit. She had a copy of the key from years ago when Mom had let her store some boxes there during one of her moves. The storage facility called to let me know someone had been accessing the unit at odd hours. The manager, a kind older man named Frank, said he'd noticed someone matching Linda's description loading boxes into a car late at night. When I drove over there, half of Mom's things were gone. Her Christmas decorations, the boxes of yearbooks she'd kept from her teaching days, even the old sewing machine she'd inherited from Grandma. The unit looked ransacked, with torn boxes and scattered papers covering the floor. I discovered she'd been selling everything on Facebook Marketplace. A friend from Mom's church sent me screenshots. There was Mom's vintage Christmas tree topper listed for $50. Her collection of teaching awards going for $20. Even the quilt she'd made for my wedding was up for sale, described as a vintage handmade quilt, perfect for collectors. Each listing broke my heart a little more. These weren't just things. They were pieces of Mom's life, memories she'd carefully preserved. The Christmas tree topper had been on our tree every year since I was born. The teaching awards represented 40 years of dedication to her students. I drove to the storage unit to see what was left. As I pulled up, I saw Linda's hit-up Honda Civic parked outside, the back bumper held on with duct tape and rust eating through the wheel wells. She was loading boxes into her trunk. When she saw me, she grabbed the urn from her passenger passenger seat and held it up like a shield. She threatened to throw it in the nearby lake if I came any closer. Her eyes were wild, desperate in a way that scared me. This wasn't the aunt who used to sneak me candy when mom wasn't looking. This was someone I didn't recognize. Her hair was unwashed, hanging in greasy strands around her face, and her clothes looked like she'd been wearing them for days. I stayed in my car, but I secretly recorded the interaction on my phone. I propped it up on the dashboard, hoping the angle would catch everything. Linda ranted about how mom had promised her everything, how I'd stolen her inheritance, how she deserved compensation for all the years mom had favored me. She waved the urn around as she talked, and I flinched every time, terrified she'd drop it. The painted forget-me-nots on the ceramic surface caught the afternoon sun, a cruel reminder of mom's favorite flowers. She said mom always loved me more because I was the good daughter who did everything right, got married, had kids, bought a house in the suburbs. While Linda struggled with failed businesses and broken relationships, I was living the perfect life. She said it wasn't fair that I got everything while she got nothing. Her voice cracked as she spoke, alternating between rage and self-pity. Then she got back in her car and drove off, still clutching the urn, leaving me shaking in my driver's seat. The next week, Linda started showing up at my kids' school. She'd wait outside during pickup time, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap like some sort of amateur spy, and talk to other parents. She told them I was unstable, that I'd stolen from a dying woman, that I couldn't be trusted. She'd approach mothers in the parking lot, striking up conversations that seemed innocent at first before steering them toward her lies about me. One mother I'd been friendly with suddenly stopped returning my texts. Another pulled her daughter away when Emma tried to play with her at recess. The school called me concerned about the allegations. The principal, Mrs. Chen, was very diplomatic, but I could tell she was worried. She sat across from me in her office, her hands folded on the desk, choosing her words carefully. She said several parents had come forward with concerns about my mental state and my fitness as a parent. She suggested maybe I should consider taking some time off from volunteering at school events until things calmed down. I tried to explain, but how do you tell someone your aunt is holding your mother's ashes hostage? It sounded insane even to me. My daughter Emma came home crying because kids were calling me a thief. She didn't understand why her friends were being mean, why their parents wouldn't let them come over anymore. She asked me if I'd done something bad, if that's why grandma was gone. Ethan was too young to understand, but he knew something was wrong. He'd become clingy, following me from room to room like he was afraid I'd disappear too. He started having nightmares, waking up screaming for me in the middle of the night. Kyle was furious. He wanted to confront Linda, maybe get the police involved. He'd pace our bedroom at night, running his hands through his hair, trying to come up with solutions. But I was scared she'd follow through on her threat to destroy mom's ashes. Those ashes were all I had left. I couldn't risk losing them forever, so I told him to wait, that I'd figure something out. He didn't like it, but he respected my wishes. He spent his evenings after work trying to repair the damage to our reputation, calling other parents, explaining the situation to anyone who would listen. I'd hear him on the phone, his voice patient but strained, repeating the same explanations over and over. Then I discovered Linda had been using mom's old email account. She'd had the password from years ago when she'd helped mom set it up. She was sending messages to mom's friends claiming I'd abused her, neglected her during her illness, stolen from her while she was dying. The emails were detailed, convincing. They included just enough truth to seem believable. Yes, I'd been mom's power of attorney. Yes, I'd handled her finances during her final months, but I'd done everything properly, documented every decision. The emails twisted these facts, adding fictional details about me pressuring mom to sign papers, isolating her from friends, even suggesting I'd withheld pain medication to make her more compliant. Several of mom's church friends blocked me on social media. Women who'd known me since I was a child suddenly wanted nothing to do with me. Mrs. Patterson, who taught my Sunday school class, sent me a message saying she was disappointed in me. Mr. Rodriguez, who'd been Dad's best friend, told Kyle he couldn't believe what I'd done. The community that had been supporting me through my grief suddenly turned cold. I'd run into them at the grocery store and they'd turn away, pretending not to see me. Linda filed a claim with the estate lawyer saying she was owed half of everything as mom's sibling. She'd forged a will, a convincing fake that looked official enough to cause problems. My lawyer, Mr. Brennan, called me in a panic. He said we'd need to fight this in court, that it would take time and money to prove the will was fake. The document had been artificially aged, the signatures traced carefully enough to pass initial inspection. I had to hire my own lawyer to fight it, draining the savings account Kyle and I had been building for the kids' college funds. The legal bills started piling up. Every meeting, every phone call, every document reviewed cost money we didn't have. Kyle started working overtime to cover the expenses, coming home exhausted and falling asleep on the couch before dinner. I took on extra shifts at work, leaving the kids with babysitters more often than I wanted. The stress was tearing our family apart. Kyle and I started fighting about money, about Linda, about how to handle everything. We'd never fought like that before, not in 12 years of marriage. We'd snap at each other over small things, the pressure building until even breathing felt difficult. During mediation, Linda brought mom's ashes in the urn and set them on the table. She kept touching it throughout the meeting, running her fingers along the painted forget-me-nots, tapping the lid. Each touch made me flinch. The mediator, a bored-looking man named Jeffrey who kept checking his watch, didn't understand why I was so emotional about an urn. He kept trying to focus on the financial aspects while I watched Linda casually handle my mother's remains like they were a bargaining chip. She dressed up for the mediation, wearing a new suit and expensive-looking jewelry. I wondered how she'd afforded it, then remembered all of mom's things she'd been selling. She probably bought that outfit with money from mom's Christmas decorations. The thought made me sick. She spoke calmly, rationally, painting herself as the grieving sister who'd been cut out of her rightful inheritance. She even managed to squeeze out a few tears when talking about how much she missed mom, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she'd conveniently brought along. My lawyer tried to point out the inconsistencies in her story, but Linda had an answer for everything. She said I'd manipulated mom in her final days, convinced her to change the will, hidden assets from the family. She claimed mom had been showing signs of dementia, that I'd taken advantage of her confusion. It was all lies, but she sold it well. The mediator seemed to be buying it, suggesting maybe we could reach a compromise. He mentioned something about family harmony and finding middle ground, as if this was a simple disagreement rather than theft and extortion. I wanted to scream that there was nothing to compromise about. Mom's will was clear. She'd left me the house because I was the one who'd taken care of her. She'd left me her savings because she knew I'd use them wisely for my children's future. Linda had cut mom out of her life for a decade, only showing up when she needed money. She didn't deserve anything, but I couldn't say that without sounding like the selfish niece Linda was painting me as. Then things got worse. Linda started dating my ex-husband's brother Randy. I'd been married briefly in my early 20s to a man named Marcus. It was a mistake, over within 2 years, but his brother Randy had always given me the creeps. He had a way of standing too close, of letting his eyes linger too long. Now he was showing up at family functions with Linda, whispering in corners, watching me with calculating eyes. They made an unsettling pair, feeding off each other's bitterness. Randy had stayed close with Marcus over the years, which meant he knew things about my finances from the divorce. Nothing major, but enough to cause trouble. He told Linda exactly what I had in savings, what my salary was, even how much equity was in the house. Linda used this information to tell the estate lawyer exactly what I could afford to pay her. She wasn't guessing anymore. She had inside information. Her demands became more specific, more targeted, designed to hurt us as much as possible. My kids mentioned that Aunt Linda and Uncle Randy had been driving by our house at night. Emma saw their car parked across the street when she got up for water. She said they just sat there, engine off, watching our house. Ethan said he saw them in the backyard one morning, but I dismissed it as his imagination. Now I wasn't so sure. The thought of them watching us, casing our house, made my skin crawl. I started closing all the curtains at night, double-checking the locks. I installed security cameras the next day. Kyle Kyle helped me set them up, placing them to cover all the entrances and the backyard. Within a week, we had footage of Linda and Randy driving by slowly, sometimes stopping to take pictures of the house. Once, Randy got out and walked around the perimeter, testing the gate, checking windows. I saved all the footage, building a file of evidence. The timestamp showed they came by at all hours, sometimes multiple times a day. Linda's next move was creating a GoFundMe. She claimed she was Mom's primary caregiver who'd been left with nothing. The description was heartbreaking, full of lies about how she'd sacrificed everything to care for her dying sister, only to be cut out of the will by a greedy niece. She included photos of her and Mom from years ago, making it look like they'd been close recently. She even posted a picture of herself holding the urn, claiming she was the only one who truly mourned Mom's passing. The photo was staged perfectly, Linda looking mournful and dignified, the urn cradled gently in her arms. The fundraiser went viral in Mom's community. Her old coworkers from the school district donated generously. Church members who'd blocked me on social media gave hundreds of dollars. Within a week, Linda had raised $8,000 from people who thought they were helping a grieving sister who'd been wronged. I watched the number climb, feeling sick. That was money that could have gone to the women's shelter Mom had volunteered at, or the literacy program she'd founded. Instead, it was lining Linda's pockets. I tried reporting the GoFundMe as fraud, but Linda had been careful. Nothing she'd written was technically provable as false. She'd implied things without stating them outright. She'd manipulated the truth just enough to avoid getting caught. The platform said they couldn't take it down without concrete evidence of fraud. My complaints went nowhere. I spent hours writing detailed reports, gathering evidence, only to receive form letter responses. My brother Thomas finally started to see through Linda's lies when she made a mistake. During a family dinner at our cousin Sarah's house, she mentioned something about Mom's final moments that only someone who'd been in the house would know. She described the way Mom's reading glasses had been folded on the nightstand, the book she'd been reading, the way the curtains had been drawn. But Linda hadn't been there. She hadn't visited Mom once during her illness. The details were too specific, too accurate to be guessed. Thomas pulled me aside after dinner. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly. He apologized for doubting me, for believing Linda's lies. He said he'd started noticing other inconsistencies in her stories, times that didn't add up, details that changed depending on who she was talking to. He asked what he could do to help. I nearly cried with relief. Finally, someone in my family believed me. We stood in Sarah's kitchen, whispering like conspirators while the rest of the family chatted in the living room. We started working together to uncover the truth about Linda. Thomas remembered that Mom had mentioned selling the old cabin years ago, the one where our families used to spend summers, but when he looked into it, he found out the sale had never gone through. The paperwork had been started but never completed. On a hunch, we drove out to the cabin one afternoon. The drive brought back memories of childhood summers. All of us crammed into Mom's station wagon, singing songs and playing car games. The place looked lived in. There were fresh tire tracks in the dirt driveway. The windows had new curtains. When we peered through the window, we could see Linda's things scattered around. She'd been living there rent-free for who knows how long. Mom must not have known. Or maybe she'd known and hadn't wanted to deal with the confrontation. Either way, Linda had been squatting in a property that was part of Mom's estate. The electricity was on, the water running. She'd made herself quite comfortable. We decided to confront her there. Thomas and I drove out the next morning, hoping to catch her off guard. We found her on the porch, sorting through boxes of Mom's things. The china from the cabinet, the photo albums, even some of Mom's clothes were piled around her. She looked up when she heard our car, and her face went through several expressions before settling on defiance. She was wearing one of Mom's sweaters, the blue cardigan Mom had knitted herself. She tried to run back into the cabin, but Thomas blocked her path. I stayed focused on the urn, which was sitting on a card table among Mom's things. Linda saw where I was looking and lunged for it. She grabbed it and held it high above her head, threatening to smash it on the ground if we didn't leave immediately. Her eyes were wild, desperate, like a cornered animal. Spittle flew from her mouth as she screamed at us. That's when she started ranting about how we'd all betrayed her, how Mom had promised her everything but the family had conspired against her. She said she deserved compensation for all the pain we'd caused her. Her words came faster and faster, years of perceived slights and imagined betrayals pouring out in a toxic stream. Then she started backing away, still holding the urn above her head. She was heading for the porch steps, probably planning to run into the woods behind the cabin, but Linda had always been clumsy. She missed the first step, stumbling backward. The urn flew from her hands as she tried to catch herself. I watched in horror as it arced through the air, seeming to move in slow motion. It hit the ground with a sickening crack, the painted ceramic shattering into a dozen pieces. Gray ash spilled across the dirt, mixing with dust and dead leaves. The forget-me-nots on the broken pieces looked like scattered petals at a funeral. I fell to my knees, trying desperately to scoop up what I could. But then I realized something was wrong. The ash was too light, too fine. It didn't look like cremated remains. It looked like fireplace ash. I looked up at Linda, who was staring at the mess with a strange expression on her face. Part guilt, part defiance, part something else I couldn't identify. Maybe satisfaction. That's when she admitted it. She'd scattered Mom's real ashes weeks ago out of spite, dumped them in a dumpster behind a fast food restaurant because she knew it would hurt me. The urn she'd been carrying around, using as leverage, threatening me with, it had been full of fireplace ash the whole time. She'd been playing me, making me dance to her tune, for nothing. She laughed as she told me, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed off the cabin walls. But I had anticipated something like this. I'd known Linda my whole life, knew how her mind worked. The urn on our mantle that she'd stolen, it had been a decoy I'd set up after the funeral. Mom's real ashes were safe at home in a different container, a simple wooden box I'd kept in our bedroom closet. I'd never told anyone, not even Kyle, because I'd had a feeling Linda might try something. Call it intuition, or just years of experience with Linda's vindictive nature. The security footage from our house clearly showed Linda breaking in and stealing the fake urn. Combined with the recording from the storage unit and Thomas's testimony about her lies, we finally had enough evidence. Thomas called the police while I gathered up the broken ceramic pieces, not because they mattered, but because I needed something to do with my hands. Linda tried to run, but she twisted her ankle in the fall. She could only limp toward the woods while Thomas calmly explained the situation to the 911 dispatcher. The police arrived within 20 minutes. 2 officers, a younger guy who looked fresh out of the academy, and an older woman who'd clearly seen it all. Linda tried to spin some story about how this was her property, how we were trespassing, but the deed was in Mom's name, and Thomas had brought copies of all the estate paperwork. The officers listened to her rant for a few minutes before asking to see our evidence. I showed them the security footage on my phone. Crystal clear video of Linda breaking into my house, walking right through the living room, grabbing the urn off the mantle. The timestamp matched the day I'd come home to find everything ransacked. The older officer raised an eyebrow and asked Linda if she wanted to explain. She just crossed her arms and demanded a lawyer. They arrested her right there on the cabin porch. The charges were breaking and entering, theft and fraud. The younger officer had to help her to the patrol car because of her ankle. She kept screaming that we'd regret this, that she'd make our lives hell. The older officer just sighed and told her she had the right to remain silent. I wished she'd use it. Thomas and I spent the rest of the day cataloging everything in the cabin. We found all of Mom's missing china, most of the photo albums, even the Christmas decorations Linda had been trying to sell. Some things were already gone, probably sold to strangers on Facebook, but we recovered more than I'd hoped. Each item we found felt like getting a small piece of Mom back. We also found Linda's laptop open on the kitchen table. She hadn't logged out of anything. Thomas took photos of everything before we touched it. Her Facebook was still up, showing all the posts she'd made about me. Her email was open too, with drafts of more fake messages she'd been planning to send from Mom's account. She'd been building a whole campaign to destroy my reputation. The GoFundMe was still active on her browser. $8,300 raised from Mom's friends and community. People who thought they were helping had been funding Linda's vendetta against me. I took screenshots of everything, especially the parts where she'd lied about being Mom's caregiver. The real kicker was her Facebook messages where she bragged to Randy about how easy it was to fool everyone. Randy showed up at the cabin while we were still there. He pulled up in his truck, saw the police cars, and immediately tried to reverse. But there was nowhere to go on the narrow dirt road. Thomas walked over and told him Linda had been arrested. Randy's face went white. He mumbled something about not knowing anything and drove off as soon as Thomas moved out of the way. We never saw him again. Over the next few days, word spread about Linda's arrest. The family members who'd believed her lies started reaching out to apologize. Cousin Sarah called crying, saying she felt terrible for doubting me. Great Aunt Martha sent a long, rambling email about how Linda had always been manipulative, as if she hadn't written that nasty post about me. I accepted their apologies, but things weren't the same. Trust, once broken, doesn't just snap back into place. The GoFundMe got shut down after I submitted all the evidence of fraud. The platform initiated refunds to all the donors. Mom's church friends were mortified when they learned the truth. Mrs. Patterson showed up at my door with a casserole and an apology. Mr. Rodriguez stopped by to fix our gate latch, his way of saying sorry. The community that had turned against me slowly started coming back around. Linda's trial was set for 3 months later. My lawyer said with all our evidence, she'd probably take a plea deal. The security footage alone was damning enough. Add in the forged will, the fraudulent fundraiser, and Thomas's testimony, and she didn't have much of a defense. Her court-appointed attorney reached out about a possible deal within 2 weeks. She ended up pleading guilty to reduced charges, 18 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and a restraining order keeping her away from me and my family. She also had to pay restitution, though my lawyer warned me I'd probably never see a dime. Linda had never been good with money. The judge also ordered her to stay off social media during her probation, which honestly felt like the worst punishment for her. The day she went to jail, I drove out to the lake where we used to go as kids. I brought Mom's real ashes with me, the ones I'd kept safe in that wooden box. Kyle came with me, and Thomas, and even the kids. We scattered some of the ashes there, in the place where Mom had taught us all to swim. The rest we kept to scatter in other places Mom had loved, her garden, the beach where she'd honeymooned with Dad, the hiking trail she'd walked every Sunday. We decided to donate the cabin to the women's shelter where Mom had volunteered. It needed work, but it could be a transitional housing unit for families getting back on their feet. Mom would have loved that. She'd always said the cabin should be filled with laughter and hope. The shelter was thrilled. They even put up a plaque with Mom's name on it. My kids slowly adjusted back to normal. Emma's friends started coming over again once their parents heard the truth. The school principal called to apologize and asked if I'd consider volunteering again. I said maybe next year. I needed time to heal first. Ethan stopped having nightmares, though he still checks that I'm nearby more often than before. Kyle and I repaired our relationship too. We started date nights again, something we'd stopped during all the chaos. We talked about everything that had happened, how the stress had nearly torn us apart. We made a promise to face future problems together instead of letting them divide us. The overtime hours stopped, the fighting stopped, and slowly our home felt peaceful again. Thomas and I grew closer through everything. We started having Sunday dinners together, something Mom had always wanted us to do. His wife Susan made Mom's pot roast recipe, and we'd tell stories about growing up. Good stories, funny ones, the kind that made our kids laugh. We kept Mom's memory alive the way she would have wanted, with love and laughter instead of anger and bitterness. I still check the locks twice before bed, still have the security cameras running. Trust takes time to rebuild, even with yourself, but I sleep better knowing Linda can't hurt us anymore.